everybody. The final interview for the Bock-fest weekend. We are at the Moerlein Lager House with Roxanne Westendorf and Curtis Eulberg, two Cincinnati residents, beer lovers, beer drinkers. Curtis, obviously, you brew here, and Roxanne, you're involved in the community in many different facets. But first and foremost, thank you for having us, and welcome to the podcast.
Great to be here.
Yeah, so, I mean, we got to be remiss. We got to do a prost, you know. Curtis, you did it so strongly before at the homebrew competition.
Yes.
And we are excited to drink some Bock.
Yes. Good stuff. Let's start. You know, we're drinking a nice little Bock sampler here. Walk us through kind of what's in front of us here as a 4 Moerlein Bocks.
So we got our color Bock, which is pale in color. We made that for the 10th anniversary dinner. It's pale in color, but it's a little bit more aggressively hopped than the other three. We have the Sherman Bock, which is our homebrew competition winner. David Saddlemeyer brewed that beer, and it turned out great on our system.
This is really good.
We scaled I think he brewed it originally on a 10-gallon scale, and he brewed it up to 15 barrels. And it's been really, really nice. And then you've got Barbender, which is a double Bock from the people at the Cindev. Great beer. And then the Beauty Bock, which I'm ashamed I haven't had a Beauty Bock.
The head brewer hasn't had it.
Poor citizen.
Damn.
Bock-fest.
Oh man.
You will have it tomorrow, I'm for sure, definitely for sure. But you know, we are Beer's Business of Balls, and we dive into the world of craft beer. But for our casual fan that might not understand what these beers are, can you kind of give us the rundown and the history of Bock beers and the history of Cincinnati with this craft beer community?
So Bock beer is a big beer style for the city of Cincinnati. Usually, from a beer standpoint, they come in a little bit higher in alcohol. They're a little harder to brew because they're, you know, when you have higher alcohol levels, you're putting more grain into your system, and it's kind of a special thing for Cincinnati, and we have a whole festival that goes with it. Roxanne, you want to?
Yeah. So think about the lore of Bocks. The lore, which is like mostly true, is that the monks in the monasteries would brew Bock, and not just Germans, but like other monasteries too, would brew the big beers, these big malty beers, during Lent, and it was part of their fasting. And I've recently read stuff. Well, it wasn't just beer; it was beer and bread, things like that. But basically, it was a limited fast. So you did a beer fast, if you will, as part of the Lenten procedures or practices in a lot of the monasteries. And the Bocks, being strong malty beers, they actually provided some sustenance for the monks to get through the day. Now, monks didn't go around toasting, right? I think most of the Bocks they brewed were a little lower alcohol than what we have today, right, and a lot more malt. But it did, with the vitamins and minerals that come in with the grains, and the sugar that comes in with the Bock and how it's brewed, it did provide sustenance for the monks during the 40-day Lenten fast, or 46-day, depending on which version of the fast that you're looking at. There's some, I hadn't realized until I saw a couple people are doing Bock fasts today, for the past couple of years, and they've actually researched it a little bit more. So there are some 46-day fasts, some places where you can eat on Sundays only and stuff like that. But basically, it's all about the tradition of these larger beers in the winter to kind of provide sustenance. Cincinnati's had a Bock-fest for at least 30 years. Celebration. It's in the over the Rhine, the old German area primarily. It's a combination of Bock beer, Bock first. We actually have a St. Francis, St. Seraph brother who blesses the Bocks and the sausages for the festival. He loves his beer. So it really is a kind of a combination of the crazy beer people and the German community and even the religious community kind of coming together. There's a parade later tonight. Tomorrow's the kind of the big festival for like the masses, and Sunday tends to be more of the day, like the German celebration day. But it's a 3-day festival, and then all the breweries in Cincinnati will also participate in some way, whether it's just brewing beer, having kind of some side festivals and stuff, and obviously here at Moerlein it's a very big deal because we also have a homebrew competition that goes with it.
Right.
I'm sure we'll get into a little bit more in a minute.
Yeah, and then you kind of, you merge all of that history and all of the tradition, and you get Moerlein. So, for the casual craft beer drinker, for the casual beer drinker in general, what is Moerlein? What is Moerlein Lager House? What is Moerlein beer? What does it mean to the community as well?
So Moerlein Christian Moerlein was one of the beer barons back in the 1800s. Cincinnati was a major beer producer back when we had about as many breweries back then as we do now. I think we finally hit about the same number. Lots of breweries, lots of German culture, German breweries before Prohibition. And they built up a lot of the history of the brewing history in Cincinnati. And I know you guys are going to do the historical tour tomorrow with the lagering tunnels, and I'm sure you'll kind of give your listeners a little bit more about that later on, like after you've been through those tours. You have to experience it before you can talk about it. But it's part of this history in Cincinnati. Greg, got into the beer industry a long time ago. He was actually a distributor for Warsteiner, things like that. Got more and more interested in the history of Cincinnati, and bought the Moerlein brand. And it took him a number of years to be ready to open his place and take Christian Moerlein into the 20th century, and now the 21st century, right? So it took him a little bit to get that done, but this is his vision here with the Lager House and bringing the history of Cincinnati and the history of beer in. And he actually had access to a lot of the old recipes, which are interesting because they're written in German and in a dialect of German that very few people read. And they don't give exact quantities, and they didn't necessarily use thermometers and stuff like that before Prohibition as much. I mean, some people, it started to come in, so there were some records. But trying to recreate as much as you can some of those older German styles and just the German culture around. So we don't lose the history of the Cincinnati brewing culture. So that's really what is very important for Greg and for Moerlein overall to really preserve that. And that's really what started this whole thing.
One thing we'd love to talk about on this podcast is not only the beer, but the people behind the beer. So we'll start with you, Curtis, and you obviously are a brewer, but where did your roots in craft brewing start? How did you get into this world, and what is your day-to-day here at the Lager House?
I started as a home brewer. Probably more than 10 years ago. And then my family were brewers back in the 1870s.
Wow.
Came over from Germany. So having success as a home brewer, and then you put two and two together, you find out that Cincinnati State has a brewing science program. I had an opportunity to go and do that, and really enjoyed the program. Interned, had an amazing co-op at Sam Adams Cincinnati Tap Room, and found myself here. And I get to take everything that I've learned and all the passion from being a home brewer and the science and the history, and turn it into some really tasty beverages.
And what has been the most, it's been a few years, but the most difficult transition from home brewing to now commercial brewing?
The difference between home brewing and commercial brewing is cellaring. The cellar is completely different. You have the addition of not only do you have temperature control, you also have high pressure. So learning learning how to control and have your SOPs set up for success with pressure is probably the biggest challenge.
And safety.
And safety as well, yeah. When you have the chemicals that you use in homebrewing are easy. The chemicals that you use in professional brewing are serious.
I think that was a big learning for us too when we interviewed a local Rhode Island brewery, Moniker, and we get the backdoor tour basically. We get a sneak preview of something out of the fermenter before it hits the keg, and then all of a sudden the chemicals come out to spray it down, and the gloves and the mask that he's wearing and all this stuff. I feel like that's a key part of the brewing process that I don't want to say it's overlooked by any means, but it's you don't necessarily realize it until you get to that commercial process.
Sanitation is huge, obviously, for homebrewers, but if you get it wrong when you're a homebrewer, you've wasted maybe $100. If you get it wrong when you're in a professional setting, you not only have you wasted potentially thousands of dollars, but you have a giant mess to clean up. So,
And what was that first brew that you created as a home brewer? Do you remember way back when?
the first brew that I made was an LD Carlson kit. It was a red ale.
How'd it come out?
It's fantastic.
Wow, I wish
But-
we could see this.
Yeah, I know.
So my first beer came out great. My second beer was a disaster. So it's always good to have the first one come out good, right?
I've never had a flop, but I know that if I had the opportunity to go back and sample that first beer, I'd just be like,
It's a beer.
good
Yeah,
job.
it smells like a beer. It looks like a beer. Yeah, it's a beer.
Halfway tastes like one, but and Roxanne, if there's anyone that knows kind of that, the ins and outs to it, it's also you. You go from engineer to craft beer, right? How did you get there? And kind of what's your role in this,
my
this
God.
craft beer?
And also show your medal.
You got to show the
Yeah.
medal too. Roxanne is an award winner as of today too.
So I
Tell the crowd what you won the award.
So I won the award for, I won one of the Bock categories. I had an entry which was a Dunkelroggen Doppelbock. So it's kind of like a Weizenbock, Doppelbock strength, but with all rye instead of wheat. And then Dunkel, the darker color. So a little bit of those slightly darker malt flavors, but not roasted or something like that. So
And now you're a medalist.
I'm a medalist. I'm so excited. It's getting entered in National Homebrew Competition this year.
Nice.
But I've been brewing for a lot longer than he has. Yeah.
There you go.
My brother gave my husband and me a kit for Christmas one year, and then all of a sudden people said, "Oh, you should do this. You should do that." And I said yes. And then they said, "You should do this." And I said yes. And the key was, when people suggested things to me, I listened to them and I looked at it and said, "Yeah, this is a good thing for me. It's a fun hobby." I've got a background, in chemistry, chemical engineering, but that's not required to homebrew by any stretch of the imagination. My husband's German, I'm Italian heritage, so it's like we have the by marriage for either of us, but that whole cooking background is actually very helpful from a brewing standpoint, because I like to do a lot of crazy things. I like old techniques, I like new techniques, I like old styles, I like crazy styles, I like new yeasts. I have a lot of fun. I've known the people in the brewing industry pretty much since it started. I've known Greg for a very long time, and I've gotten involved with a lot of things and stayed heavily involved in the homebrew aspects of things. And homebrew spawned the craft brewing movement, right? So when you look at it, without homebrewers like Curtis, right, we wouldn't have the craft brewing industry that we have now, and that's where so much of that creativity came from, and the whole learning process about how to do things. And I think it's so important that people look at craft beer and what it really brings to kind of the way we think about things as creative people, and the way we think about things as having pride in our community, because the local people and the local breweries in the community are huge to a lot of stuff that goes on in the community beyond beer. There's a lot of philanthropic stuff that happens through beer. So it's something that's just been really easy to stay involved with because it's fun, but it also is meaningful.
Right. You make a great point. It's much more than just the product, right? And you look around here, the community is live well right down here. To our right, that's Paul Brown Stadium where the Bengals play. To our left is where the Cincinnati Reds play. You have TQL Stadium right down the road. You have the Cincinnati Cyclones venue. How has this helped, right? It's obvious that, maybe the traffic you're in a prime place for traffic. It's a good piece of real estate. It's on the water, right? But, what about the physical location makes Moerlein so successful? And specifically, like in relation to the sports community too.
We have, obviously, foot traffic can have a really, really huge positive impact on a small business. Regardless of size, big or small. So we have some seasonality between people at the football stadium, the ballpark, obviously, but then we also have the new music venues that bring people in as well. We have people at the Heritage Bank Arena and at the music venue that is downriver, and that has a tremendous foot traffic.
And Riverbend too down the other.
Right, and then so right here you see what we call the Wiesen, right? So this big open field between us and Paul Brown Stadium. And like at Oktoberfest, Moerlein will actually have a separate Oktoberfest celebration where they set up tents and have like additional Oktoberfest space here besides the rest of the downtown Oktoberfest, which actually has kind of moved into this area anyway because this is a park. What you'll find in the Cincinnati area, in Ohio in general, is that breweries tend to anchor community spaces. And in some places, the development is kind of a little bit of this, then a little bit of that, and then other stuff happens. So it's like kind of one feeds the other. In other places, the brewery started, right? Here it's you always had the sports arenas down here. But with the building of the new stadiums and everything, the whole thing just kind of coalesces and becomes really important, I think, from the standpoint like the Smale Park. Here, it's all walkable. You park and you walk and you hang out. There's the Dora district now, so I don't know if you're familiar. So Dora is designated outdoor recreation area.
Yeah, that's
right?
Oddly enough, our Uber driver told us about this today.
Right.
Mainly because of the open carry.
Right, so we are in the Dora district here, and there are numerous ones depending on where you are in the state. It's an Ohio law. It started a little bit before COVID, and halfway through COVID, they made all the Dora stuff permanent, which is awesome because it allows you don't have to just sit inside a place and drink or and stay there and be captive or worry about getting into another place. You can go throughout the district. You have to buy a cup, buy your Dora cup.
It's a lot easier than going, chugging out your beers.
It's also, but yes, it promotes more responsible consumption.
Right.
And it also promotes more community because you're out there talking to people and not stuck at a table. You're just like, oh, I'm done. Like, I want to go out and walk. Somebody else can come in and take the table. It's like, it's really one of those best of all worlds types of things. It doesn't affect just beer. It's any drinks now, which is pretty cool. But obviously, beer is a little. It's very easily portable and it lasts you a little bit longer. It takes a little longer to drink pint than it does like a smaller glass. But it's been a huge help for I think any brewery that's in a Dora district, and you'll almost always see at least one or more breweries anchoring a Dora district, which is pretty cool. I can't say for all of them, but most of the ones I know about have at least one brewery anchoring, which is pretty cool. And it fits with the whole park-like atmosphere here. There's actually Cincinnati has a summer beer fest that will be down here, in the park right across from here. It just makes it so you have more space, it's more comfortable, and it's much more a family atmosphere. And that's really part of craft brewing, right? It's not about the dingy, dirty bars. It's about families too.
That's such a good point. I'm curious too, and I know, Will, you are too, but Cincinnati Bengals, the run that they had.
Oh man.
Maybe a sore subject at this point, but you know, there were, even from Rhode Island, we saw the videos of people wrapped around bars. You know, Curtis, before we hopped on the air, talking about how you basically you had to revise your production schedule, right? Because the community came in and drank all your beer and left, basically. So, I mean, how cool is that to see the Bengals go on the Super Bowl run? You know, obviously, guys did some cool, you know, endeavors with cans and things like that as well. You know, to have the community rally around a team that wasn't expected to go that far in the Super Bowl, and then come out and show out for that long period of time that the Bengals went on this run. How cool was that?
So, last time that happened, I was in 4th grade. And
That was the right answer.
I just dated myself there, but
I was at least already in Cincinnati
It's
working
cool.
at that.
1989 for those listening at home.
Right, not to age Curtis. Yeah, 1989.
the team made an investment in a couple of key players and ended up having the right stuff, and it was magical.
That was a good, they're a good team.
To have a kicker that goes out and says, "Hey, it looks like we're going to go to the playoffs."
That's just swagger. That's just
That
swagger.
is
He has
baller,
confidence
like
like no
literally baller stuff. Yeah.
And he's like just like a super sweet kid, right? He's like a rookie and this like super sweet kid. It's like, okay, we're there.
We were just talking about how unfair it was, all the crap he received for, you know, watching a halftime show and things like that.
It's like he hasn't missed a kick in like 10 weeks.
Let the man do what he wants.
I was like, the guy is he's
It's
doing
awesome.
he's doing his job.
You want a Reuben? We'll get you a Reuben.
Well, and then you got Joe Burrow, you know, like ice veins type of thing, and you know, people say it's like, you know, nobody in Cincinnati is saying, oh, the season was a disaster because of that last game, because you know, we all know we need an offensive line, okay? we all
There's
realize that.
draft projections that, you know, the first 7 picks are all offensive linemen.
Here's the other nice thing about
A few
Cincinnati.
free agents, but
Here's the other nice thing about Cincinnati sports is, regardless of outcome, Cincinnati sports do not define Cincinnati. Yes, they complement Cincinnati.
I like that.
but the fans are intense
Yeah, they have
but polite.
And you see
Yeah.
it, right,
there's an intensity.
Yes.
But we're not. There are certain places within a day's drive of Cincinnati where their sports teams define the city.
you can just say Cleveland.
And
We can say it. If you don't want to say it, we'll say it.
And
I lived there
Pittsburgh.
for
Spade is
13
spade,
years, and they wear their hearts on their sleeve.
Pittsburgh's in that
What are you gonna do?
I grew up not too far from Philadelphia. You don't want to like just say
That's
Philly
a
fan,
place
right?
I
You
would
know?
prefer we don't say.
But it's like Cleveland wishes that they had a Joe Burrow instead of a Baker Mayfield.
do.
It is.
That's it. Everyone wishes they had a Baker
Yeah.
It's like, it's fine.
I don't know.
It's fine.
You have Joe Burrow. How do you love Baker Mayfield?
We have Joe Cool. You have the Snoopy like
Everything that you can
comparisons.
watch.
Exactly.
They're
Let's think
right?
about Cleveland sports, not in terms of sports, but in terms of Greek tragedy. That's why you're into Cleveland sports.
Yeah.
Not because you want a winning team, but because you're just like, oh wow.
John
that just
Fanta, we
happened.
love you. What's
Oh,
right?
Yeah.
Oh, goodness.
But yeah, do people realize though that, you know, yes, the Bengals made the Super Bowl. Unfortunately, they did not win it. But the impact that it had, not only on the local economy, but the craft beer economy as well. I mean, you had the Houday beer that was sold out immediately. I mean, just the buzz around the city where it's like sports fans, they like to drink. You know, it's on an assumption. It's like they like to drink, and it's like, where are they going? The place is right next to the stadium. But how much of an impact was that, you know, these past couple weeks in terms of like just a buzz around the city?
Yeah. They weren't just going to places next to the stadium. They were going everywhere, like
that's what it
your
seems.
local neighborhood bar.
Yep.
And like I know a friend of mine posted, it's like, well, it just takes away from drinking or like the spending and other, like, you know, for the next couple weeks. So it's like, you know, it evens out. And in Cincinnati, I don't think it evened out. I think that we're a net positive because people in Cincinnati don't cut down their social stuff because I did it last week. So
that's also the vibe we're getting from the city.
yeah, I mean we've got so much stuff going on. We've had things postponed. It's been a rough 2 years, right, for everybody in every city. But when you think about it, we've survived. The brewing industry here has survived pretty well.
Yeah.
I mean, people have had tough times, but everybody.
We survived COVID and we survived the Super Bowl.
Yeah. I mean, but you had people everybody did takeouts. This was the first place we came when we felt safe last year. During the first break in the wave. And we were going to eat inside, but then it was a beautiful day, so we ended up eating outside upstairs anyway, right? So, but it was one of those things okay, where do I trust going? And frankly, Moerlein Lager House was a place I trusted going, but most of the local breweries were places that we trusted to go to. So, or to go take out, or to do something like that. And everybody made it easy to still patronize them. I think that was really important.
I think so. I mean, it's a collective effort, as we were talking about before we kind of went on air. Cincinnati has certainly lived up to that expectation, and it's been great. It's the beer community has really shown out. I think even just less than 12 hours into our trip for sure, and we're excited to see what's in store. But Curtis, Roxanne, thank you guys. This has been great.
Thanks for visiting.
Yeah, give us the floor is yours now. Where, if folks are visiting Cincinnati, where can they find your physical location, and how can they keep up with you guys on social media? How can they stay involved with the Cincinnati craft beer community as well?
Sure, we're on the banks. Actually, no, we're not even on the
We're not
banks.
on the
We're
bank,
at Smale Riverfront Park.
That's right.
In between the two stadiums, we're at 115 Joe Nuxall Way. You can visit us during a ball game. You can visit us during a football game. In terms of social media,
I guess
Curtis isn't really
about
good.
social media.
Moerlein Lager, LA.
Moerlein Lager House, yes. Just search for Moerlein Lager House and you'll find it.
And you'll cut Curtis off the phone.
Right.
Just do
He
that.
just brewed
Maybe we'll
the
cut that
beer.
out.
So cool things. If you actually live in Cincinnati, don't forget about the Mug Club here, this is the most
Yeah,
awesome.
and Roxanne, for you, this is your pitch as well. Moerlein and the Cincinnati beer community.
And the homebrew community.
How can folks get involved in the Cincinnati beer community?
All right, so lots of people have there's loyalty programs everywhere. The Mug Club for Moerlein. I just want to let people know we have a local artist, Jim Effler, who does posters for our Bock-style festival every year. They're the most awesome posters. He's also collaborated with Greg Hardman, the owner of Moerlein Lager House, on these mugs, which are awesome. There's this year, and there should be 3 more coming in future years. So it's a collectible and it's practical too because you can use it. I would also like to remind people about the homebrew community. So my club is the Bloatarian Brewing League. College roommates in the 70s, that's all you need to know about our name. So Bloatarian, like Bloatarian. Bloatarian.com. We sponsor, we put on the competition. Greg and Moerlein Lager House sponsored the competition. So it's the Bock Fest. We have it every year except for last year. Yeah, life happens. But we have it every year. It's a Bock only competition. So Bloatarian.com. If you're in the area, we'd love to have you join us. If you're visiting, we'd love to have you contact us. And if you're a home brewer or interested in home brewing, let us know. And beer is good.
I like that. That's a great way to end.
That is it. We got a long weekend ahead. We appreciate the time. Thank you so much. And if you haven't been to Cincinnati yet, this is the place to be for craft beer. We are slowly but surely learning. Again, Roxanne and Curtis, thank you for the time.
Awesome.
Cheers.